Hi, Sarah Catalan, the Executive Director of OC Tax. We are here with our board chairman today, Adam Wood, to talk about the housing crisis in Southern California and the recent fires' impact on that crisis. Thank you, Adam, for joining us today. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Sarah. My name is Adam Wood. I work for the Building Industry Association of Southern California. I'm a senior vice president for the organization, representing the Orange County region in particular on that. So our mission is to represent all the housing issues that come before us as a region.
Thank you, Adam, for joining us. There's always plenty to talk about with housing in Southern California, but you posted an article recently that kind of caught my eye, and it had to do with the housing shortage in Southern California that we face and the potential harm that these fires could do to the availability of the housing stock we currently have. So I wonder if you can kind of comment on that article and the housing shortage that you're seeing in our area.
Happy to do it. Cat Matters is an incredible resource. Dan Walters over there does some great reporting. Really important article talking about how the fires have, of course, been absolutely devastating, and they're moving us in the wrong direction on housing production. You know, more than 10,000, probably numbers going to get much higher than that even, homes lost during this whole process. And when you look at it at a really kind of aggregate or macro level, we're within this RENA process where we're supposed to be building 1.34 million, or at least zoning for 1.34 million homes within the region. There's a crushing demand for supply within this region. And not only are we not building, now we're seeing net loss of units overall. So it puts us in a really terrible place for production. And what that really translates to down for the consumer, Orange County Register had a good article a couple days ago, came out, and it was saying if an Orange County buyer spends 40% of their income to buy a median home, they need to be making a salary of $231,000 a year, and they need $236,000 just sitting around for their down payment in cash.
Right.
These numbers are astronomical, and there's absolutely no way we can get young home buyers, first-time buyers into this market. We've blocked out an entire region of California.
I did see that. You had mentioned, I think it was a little over $7,000 a month for a
Mhm.
mortgage. And not everyone's a brain surgeon, right? So not everyone's going to be able to afford that. So yeah, you're excluding an entire generation of homeowners and probably two generations if you think about those living on fixed incomes as well. As it relates to the fire, we saw the governor had made an executive order to suspend the Coastal Commission's any new restrictions or zonings on the fire affected area, as well as CEQA. I wondered if you could comment on those restrictions or the lifting of those restrictions.
Yeah, we're excited to see it, and it's, the only thing that concerns us about it is we feel that this is a great first step that he took with the suspension of CEQA and Coastal Commission in those areas, but it really needs to go a lot farther.
Right.
These CEQA for decades has been identified as the number one blocker of new housing production. Huge problem region wide. Coastal Commission obviously applies along the coast, but they have a pretty strong reputation for not being particularly excited to see new housing constructed within that region. So yes, 100% agree with what the governor did to say that we need to suspend those if we have any chance of getting housing rebuilt within the impacted areas. The problem is it has to go well beyond that. It needs to go region wide because, like I mentioned before, we looked at the RENA numbers. 1.34 applies to the entire SCAG region. We can't simply just rebuild these homes in place. That'll happen, but a process like this, it could take 5 to 10 years before we see realistic recovery in those regions where those neighborhoods are back up and running. The folks impacted by these fires can't wait around for 5 to 10 years to get their neighborhoods back online.
Right.
That demand has now been transferred out. And again, another great article in the Orange County Register just a few days ago talking about demand in Newport Beach has absolutely skyrocketed, that folks from the Palisades are looking in droves to move down into the Orange County region, and it's driving up the cost both of rental and for sale product. So what we really need is a region-wide solution, and the governor was exactly right to say CEQA suspension and Coastal Commission, have them take a step back. You've got to at least start there if we're going to move the needle, because again, we've had a housing crisis for decades,
Right.
And we have not seen the needle move significantly. In fact, we've actually, again, in the Cal Matters article, it talks about how we're moving in the wrong direction. We're seeing less permitting. We're down, I think it said something like 13%, 13.5% from last year, or 23 to 24. We're in a very troubling trend line here, and we have the solutions. We know what the solutions are because we just saw them put in place. But
Right. Well, do you think that is by the governor acknowledging that CEQA is a barrier to home reconstruction? Are we hopeful at all that there'll be some legislative action, or that there will be others to acknowledge that CEQA is also a barrier to building new homes? Are you hearing anything about that?
there's a lot of whisper. I mean, it's still very dynamic situation up in Sacramento, so we're hearing lots of rumors up there. I know we're very interested in seeing three big things that are really hurting housing from a regional level. And number one continues to be CEQA reform. So that's something that has to happen day one. The litigation abuse under that is staggering. Number two, we have an insurance crisis. It's been exacerbated by this current fire. But even before that started, new home construction could not get insurance coverage based on the way things are being structured in this state. So new home construction ground to a halt in many, many locations because of that. And three, permit streamlining is something we really have to see. The process you have to go through in California to get an approval to just build a single home is significantly harder than anywhere else in the country.
Right.
And that translates directly to costs for the buyer at the end of the day.
Right.
We can fix all that.
Right. I think those are all very sensible reforms. If you had to just kind of guess the appetite for on those three topics, we'd love to see all of those go through. Is there one in particular you think might have a little more momentum this next legislative session?
Fingers remain crossed on all of them. Obviously, insurance crisis is getting a lot of press. So many of the major carriers have pulled out of California. There's a lot of attention on it. Some solutions have been brought forward, so we're hoping to see the needle move, let's say, on that one a little bit. And I think permitting reform is something that's caught a lot of people's attention. Okay. Again, with this rebuilding process for Altadena and for the Palisades, a conservative estimate would say at least 5 years would be the best case scenario. Just in pre-fires, getting anything through that process can take 5 years. Now you've got, let's say, again, 10,000 potentially unique applications coming forward on top of the applications that were already going to be proposed. The staffing, the resources just aren't there for this possibly to occur in time. So if we don't change how we do business, we will never get out of this crisis situation. We were in a crisis before the fires. It's now much, much worse.
Maybe that could be our new motto for the Golden State, is jumping from one crisis to another. That's how we govern. We are seeing that there's roughly 100,000 units that are getting approved, per year. That's obviously not getting us to the governor's goal for new housing. With some of the reforms that you suggested, do you think that would get us close to that goal on new units per year, or are we still just too far off? Is California just too tough of a climate for home builders?
So what we like to say at the BIA is that, we talk about a housing crisis, but it's really not a housing crisis. It's a housing policy crisis, which is a very nerdy distinction. But if you remove the barriers, the demand is clearly here. Like we talked about before, $7,700 a month. The market is clamoring, begging for new housing construction. People want to still be part of this California dream.
Right.
If we got the government policies out of the way, we could get there and we could fix that. We could bring the cost of housing down. We could bring everything back into balance. But right now, the policies that are enacted in this state are so constrictive that it has dramatically increased the cost of producing anything. And it's made it so unpredictable whether or not you'll even get an approval process that you're seeing some of the bigger home builders' capital moves out of state because it's too risky to bet on getting government approvals for some new housing construction. That's fixable. That's a very easy thing we could fix if we wanted to. And I'm hoping the appetite has finally come around that we can start, making a difference here and let people have homes in California.
Well, OC Tax, obviously, housing is a huge priority for us. So keep us posted with what you're working on. We'd love to support some of those efforts and pieces of legislation. If people want to learn more about what you're doing for housing, is there a website you'd refer them to or a social media channel to follow to kind of keep up with what you're doing in Sacramento and locally?
Yeah, definitely. We have a lot going on and it's changing by the minute. So we're going to be rolling out a lot of updates very soon. You can always check out the latest and greatest from us, www.biasc.org. And we'll have some updates rolling out to our homepage over the next few weeks.
Sounds great. Well, thank you for joining us here today, Adam. We really appreciate it. And we'll make sure we add those links to our site as well.
Thank you very much. Great to be here.